Now, to wrap this up, I want to talk about an interesting experience I've had that's technically taken. It's been a long con, which is that I finished a book the other day. I finished writing a book. I have been... So when I graduated high school, when I was in high school, I got really into writing. I got really into fiction writing. I wrote a couple, like, I don't even know how long they are. But I wrote like a couple of like fantasy adventure novels, like Western fantasy, like alt history. That's kind of how I looked at it. Adventure novels. That I had I don't know, that was really important to me in high school. And I discovered a real love for writing. And I wanted to be a novelist. That was like my plan. Like I'm so stupid that when I graduated, I was like, I'm not going to go to college. I'm going to be a novelist. And that's a little risky. So I got to have a backup plan. And my backup plan is YouTube. So I put out the Galileo video and it got 200 views. And I said, well, I got a backup plan and it's called being a novelist. I'm rocking 2 offhand weapons at the same time. You can't even tell what my main gun is. And I started a book back in 2021. Yeah, I actually looked at like the history, like the document history. February 1st, 2021. And I have been working on it on and off over the course of 5 years. If I was actually like less of a procrastinator and was better at managing my time and staying focused on it, probably could have done it in like 2, to be honest. But I think finishing it now has been, perhaps in some way it might have helped just because I've had a lot of time to think about it. The story for the most part has stayed the same. I want to offer, I don't even want to talk about the plot or anything. It's a vampire novel. So there's that. That's your little taste. And it's just a first draft. So when I say I finished a book, I don't want to say like, you know, it's like finished with an asterisk. I finished it kinda. It's not, I wouldn't call it like ready for publication probably. I sent it off to a couple people and like some old teachers of mine who helped me out a lot in high school. And now I'm just kind of sitting on it for a bit. But I'd like to talk about the experience, because for a lot of people, writing a book is this sort of mythical, like really difficult thing. And it's hard in the way that like a lot of other things are hard, which might not sound like very useful advice, but I think it is, because it's one of those things that people put into like this special category. I don't actually think that writing a book is hard. It's hard, but it's not hard in like a special way. It's not hard in like a unique way. If you have like worked at anything that was even like kind of a real project and finished it, you can write a book. Like if you graduated college, you can write a book. If you I don't know, if you trained for like a marathon for like a few months, you can write a book. Anyone can do it. I will also say, I know that a lot of people have this kind of like anxiety about writing. They call it the fear of the blank page. I do not have that, which is a really useful skill to have when part of your job is, well, you know, writing scripts about stuff. And I can kind of just like freestyle it. And that's not like an issue for me. So maybe everything that I'm going to say is like, you're like, well, this guy, he was just born different. Maybe I was just built a little different, but I really do think it's possible. I can talk, and I want to talk about a little bit of how I did it, which is, the first thing that I did. So when I wrote those books in high school, I was just kind of going off of, I had it all in my head. And then I would write it. I called it a chapter. It's probably just a couple pages each. I would write like a chapter weekly. And then I would upload it actually online to my school's creative writing website, of which I was the president, because I was one of the only people in the club and I cared the most. So that like kept me really consistently writing. But I was just kind of I had an idea of where I wanted the story to go. I knew like what the ending of each book was going to be, but I wasn't always sure exactly how I'd get there. I didn't write that much in the way of notes. I just kind of had it all in my head, and I sort of worked week to week, which was really fun, to be honest. It was definitely like an escape from how stressful school was. When I decided to sit down and like write a book, I decided to take, maybe just writing, by the seat of your pants is a good strategy for some people. I decided to try a different approach, which was to actually plan a little bit. So the way that I did that was that I had a basic premise. I knew where it was going to take place. I knew when it was going to take place. I had an idea of like the main characters who would be involved. And then I had like the basics worked out in my head. And then I sat down and I started with an outline, and I structured the outline very particularly, which was, I used the South Park method because it actually totally works. And it honestly makes it a lot easier. So the South Park method is the method that Matt Stone and Trey Parker use to write South Park episodes, and how they can get stuff out so fast. Because it's a really useful formula for organically building out a story. And however. It's and so and however. Or therefore and however, something like that. And it basically, it's a rule of thumb, which is that you have plot beats. Moments of the story that you would like list in bullet point order. This is the way that the plot goes in bullet point order. And in between every single one of those bullet points, you have to be able to put therefore or however. And if you do that, sometimes doing the same a couple in a row, sometimes every other one, depending on the cadence of the story, you will just create a story. It's like weirdly easy. So this thing happens. Therefore, the character decides that they really want this. Therefore, they go here. However, this is the case, and they can't get it. Therefore, they go to someone else, and that person needs to be for help. But however, that person, and it's like pretty easy. It's like surprisingly easy. As long as you have an idea of like the basic arc of the story, it helps give it a lot of structure. So I literally just had in my outline paragraphs which represent the plot beats of just, this is basically what happens. And a lot of them are very short of like, this happens, the character goes here, they feel like this, maybe they talk about this. This is the next thing that introduces the next moment in the story. And then I have a little bracket, and then I line break, and I do a little bracket, and then it's I think it's so and but, just to make it easier for me to write. So and but. They do this, so they do this. This happens, so this happens. This happens, but then this happens. And I just kind of like went along that path, and I can't say anything about how successful it was, but in terms of, I'm not telling you how to write a good book. I'm just telling you how you can write the book, because it's very scary for a lot of people, and a lot of people are like, oh God, and having that kind of a structure and a guiding narrative, skeleton, was very helpful for me to go back to and reference. And I changed a lot of things as I was writing and as I went along. Sometimes something makes, sometimes something makes total sense on paper, but then you actually get to writing it and you go, how do I actually make that happen? How do I actually get, like, how does this conversation go so that this actually happens? How do I go from this, like, this thing to, how do I transition from here to, from this point to, like, what's the actual inciting, okay. And then you just kind of got to, like, work with it in the moment, but you know what you have to do, right? So that helps a lot. The second thing is that, wow, it turns out that if you just sit down and write a little bit, like every night, like every day, like I always write in the evenings, eventually it builds up. Like writing 500 words once a week isn't a lot. It never feels like a lot in the moment. But then like you do that for the whole week, and that's like yeah, let's say like 3,500 words. That's like a pretty decent chunk. Like a standard novel length is like 50,000. That's like 1 week of work. What's 50? What's 50,000? Say divided by 3,500. That's 14%. Holy shit. So that's like 14 weeks. 14 weeks. How many weeks? There's 52 weeks in a... What the fuck? That doesn't even sound right. But yeah, like if you were to just genuinely write like 500 words every day, you get a book, you get like 50,000 words done in a couple months. I believe the final word count for my book is around 63,000, something like 63,500, something like that. So it's a little longer, but if you're shooting for like a minimum 50K, yeah. And it's like, I don't know, it's not like rocket science. It's not like Herculean. You can do it. I'm just trying to be encouraging. I am not special because I wrote a book. I'm very normal. And you could do it too. So that was cool. It was the actual moment of finishing it was very interesting, because I had decided, I was not initially planning on writing an epilogue, and then I decided as I was nearing the end that I would, I really wanted to write an epilogue, to wrap up a couple things. And as I was writing it, I wasn't really sure where I would stop, because I hadn't planned for that. I hadn't written that in the outline. I just kind of had a rough idea. And I wrote, the end of like what I knew would have been the end of like a scene. And I kind of looked at it, and I was debating on whether or not to add something else that I was thinking about. And I thought, no, actually. I read the last few words, and I said, these should be the last words of the book. I think that this stirs a kind of emotion in me that I feel like this is the note that I would like to end on. And I just kind of like left it there. And it was weird because it wasn't like, I don't know. It like at the very start of this podcast, I talked about finally winning that last round of Flesh and Blood at the tournament, right? The last game I played, I won, and how much of like a catharsis that was, how much of a release of emotion, how good I felt, right? From that experience. And when I wrote the last words of the book, I really didn't feel like that. It was just kind of like I had this feeling that you have internally when you're just kind of going and going and going. And then I was just kind of done. There was like no climax. There was no big, I'm done. Yeah, there was no like rush of adrenaline. It was just, I was done. And then I was just kind of left in this sort of, I was left in motion with nothing to do. And it was very odd. It was very odd, but it felt right. And saying that like, yeah, that is the end. I don't know. I just kind of walked into it. So it was an interesting experience. I haven't really felt like that many other times in my life. I will say that part of my motivation for finally finishing it and like getting off my ass and doing it was that it was, I'd always had this thing in my head that like I would really like to finish a book. Publish maybe, but I want to write a book by the time I'm at least 26. because that was the age that John Romero was when Doom came out. And for some reason, that was like this goal in my head of like, if I can at least write a book by the time I'm 26 and I can hit the Romero age, I won't feel like I'm a total fuck up, like I'm squandering all of my potential. And then like the long shot was 23, because that was how old John Carmack was when Doom came out. And then around the time of my 23rd birthday, I oddly enough wasn't even thinking about it. I was just kind of like walking around. I was taking a walk around New Year's, and I was thinking to myself, you know, if I get like a third of the way through my 20s or a quarter of the way through my 20s, and I haven't like finished this stupid book, I'm going to feel really dumb. I'm going to feel really stupid. I should do that. And and then it kind of just adds up. Where I was at a point for a bit where I was like, wow, I'm like a couple thousand words away from being done. That's like kind of shocking. It's like, it's actually like very realistic. Like, it's very close. If I had really locked in, I could have gotten it done by the end of February, but it didn't happen. So April it is. Yeah, so that was, I guess, my experience writing a book in the background over the last couple of years. I don't know when, if ever, it will be available. I don't know if I would ever send it to a publisher. I guess I could. I could try. I plan on trying to get it published traditionally. But I'm totally open to self-publishing stuff. My whole history is kind of self-publishing, so I'm not against the idea. I have definitely thought about it. I can use all that YouTube clout, you know, those 8,000 subscribers to really kickstart, you know, get an audience for something like completely out of the realm of my typical online presence. I might make it available to read it. Yeah, I think it would be fun to do an audiobook of it too. I like doing readings and narrations. That would be fun. So that's just kind of a thing floating around in the background now. I have other ideas for books, and I've started and stopped different ideas over the years, because this main one was the thing that I was like, I should probably be spending time on that. And so, maybe I'll kind of get to those now. So that's cool. It's kind of, it feels a little freeing. It feels a little freeing to focus on other stuff. And that's about it for book talk.